Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly break down how Atletico Madrid knocked Liverpool out of the Champions League. When we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have Atletico Madrid in a narrow 4-4-2, and we end up seeing Liverpool in a 4-3-3. When we assess Atletico Madrid's overall shape, what we end up seeing here is that we have Saul and Angel Carrera tucking in a bit narrow to ensure that Atletico Madrid is compact in that central zone. Diego Costa and Joao Felix are starting up front, and rather than pressing Van Dijk and Gomez, they kept their positioning in between Jordan Henderson to ensure that he couldn't dictate the tempo of the game from deeper positions. That also helps Atletico Madrid ensure that they aren't overloaded in that center of the pitch. So what you end up seeing here now is that you have Oxlade-Chamberlain against Thomas Partey, and you should have Wijnaldum against Koke. Nevertheless, this game was solely about how Liverpool were going to be able to break down Atletico Madrid's shape. And as you could see here, like I said, they were off in two narrow banks of four. And when we assess Liverpool's overall attacking structure, it was as we expected. We had Mane and Salah out in the wider areas, but Mane often looked to tuck in a bit central. So he was making runs across Trippier and Savage. We had Firmino occupying the center backs, but looking to drop off into midfield zones. And then we ended up having Salah towards the right-hand side. And the key threat here from Liverpool was solely down the right-hand side. They created a majority of their chances there, and it's because they had a lot of variety going down that flank. What you see here is that you have Salah ahead of Lodi, and what should also be mentioned here is that the issue that Liverpool had in that first leg was that Salah and Mane were narrow, but what Atletico Madrid did here is that when Salah and Mane received the ball in the wider areas, Saul and Angel Carrera would drop off a bit deeper to ensure that they were involved in 1v2 situations. So that simply wasn't going to be the fix here for Liverpool. What we ended up seeing down that right-hand side was that we had movements from Oxlade-Chamberlain and Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Atletico Madrid simply couldn't cope. What you would see is that if you had Salah ahead of Lodi, you would see initially Alexander-Arnold making the overlapping run, and that would allow Salah to cut in. There were times where you had Oxlade-Chamberlain drifting out to that wide flank, and there was one time where he ran by Lodi and Saul to deliver a cross into the box that Felipe did clear away. And if you do have that, what you have here now is Alexander-Arnold pushing forward, and Thomas Partey is responsible to step out to him because of his passing threat from those deeper positions. And if that wasn't the case, like I said, you could have Salah shifting out into that wider zone, have Alexander-Arnold looking to push forward, and arguably the key move of the game here is that whenever we had that shape intact down that right-hand side, Oxlade-Chamberlain would make the run off of Thomas Partey, or eventually Saul, who did shift into that zone. And the only other alternative movement that we can see from Liverpool down that side is if we have Salah dropping off ahead of Saul, which ends up seeing Alexander-Arnold push forward as the advanced right-sided player ahead of Lodi. But as you can see, that's how Liverpool were set up down that right-hand side, with Alexander-Arnold looking to make the run beyond the shuttler. And towards the left, you had Mane running across. Robertson didn't really look to get into advanced positions in that first half, and Correa did a good job of tracking his movement. And Wijnaldum was an interesting feat because he didn't look to run beyond Koke or the midfield shuttler on that side. But what would end up happening here is that if Oxlade-Chamberlain is making the run into that right half space, Firmino would drop off into space into that midfield. You'd have Koke being forced to shift out to him, and that would create space for Wijnaldum to push forward to operate as a threat in the box. Nevertheless, when you break down some of Liverpool's best chances, majority of it stemmed down the right-hand side, and we also saw movement from Wijnaldum in that deep midfield zone, breaking into the box, and that was due to great benefit from Liverpool's production down that right-hand side. So when we look to an example, what we end up seeing here is Gomez slide the ball out to Oxlade-Chamberlain ahead of Saul. Oxlade-Chamberlain's ahead of Saul on that touchline. We have Salah ahead of Lodi, and that creates space for Alexander-Arnold to push forward in a narrow midfield position. Oxlade-Chamberlain drops the ball off to Alexander-Arnold, and when Alexander-Arnold receives that ball in that zone, Diego Costa doesn't step, Thomas Partey doesn't step forward, and what we end up seeing here is that we have Firmino dropping off into that midfield zone, and Alexander-Arnold clips across into the box ahead of Savage, and Wijnaldum's able to get to it before him and flick it towards goal, but Oblak does push it away. Eventually, we did see Simeone shift his midfield setup. What we ended up seeing was Koke shift out to the left-hand side rather than Saul. And we had Saul shift into that left central midfield zone with Thomas Partey shifting to the right-hand side. That didn't necessarily help Atletico Madrid because now Saul still had a job of marking Liverpool's most dangerous player on the night, and that was Oxlade-Chamberlain's runs in beyond Lodi. And in the final stages of that half, Liverpool were able to create their better chances. Initially, what we end up seeing here is Van Dijk square the ball to a narrow Alexander Arnold, and with Koke and Joao Felix dropping off a bit deeper, what we end up seeing here is that Alexander Arnold is able to split those two players and find Oxlade-Chamberlain running off Saul in between Felipe and Lodi. When the pass falls to Oxlade-Chamberlain, his shot is initially blocked by Felipe, but it ends up falling into the path of Salah ahead of Lodi. We have Koke tracking back to make it that 1v2 situation, and then we end up seeing Salah drop the ball off to Alexander Arnold once again. Alexander Arnold doesn't close down, and he's able to dink a ball over Saul and Lodi and across Felipe for Firmino goal side of Savage, but once again, All Black stands tall and ensures that Liverpool aren't able to get that vital away goal. And shortly after that, we witness Liverpool's opener, and it perfectly summarizes his attempt to bypass Diego Simeone's tactical shape. What we end up seeing here is the ball is shifted out once again to Trent Alexander-Arnold in a narrow position, and he slides it out to Salah ahead of Lodi, with Koke dropping off to make it a 1v2 situation. Salah gets the ball, drops it back to Alexander-Arnold to try and pull out Koke, and Alexander-Arnold gives it back to Salah. What Salah locates now is the movement of Oxlade-Chamberlain running off Saul. So Salah pokes that ball across Lodi into the right channel for Oxlade-Chamberlain to get the ball. What should be noted here is that you have Saul taken out of the game, and once again, Firmino drops off deeper to take out Thomas Partey. That allows space for Wijnaldum to break into the box, and what's also pivotal here is that Mane darts across the center backs to make up the space that Firmino did leave vacant. So he takes away the center backs who now have to drift towards the 6-yard box, and Oxlade-Chamberlain's pullback cross falls to the edge of the 6-yard box for Wijnaldum, breaking freely towards goal, and he nods his effort off the ground and into the net. So as you can see, Klopp identified a clear route to goal as Liverpool persistently attacked down that right-hand side and got into good positions. So going into the second half, we're expecting some sort of tactical change from Diego Simeone, but frankly, we didn't get it. However, the one real change that we did see from Liverpool was that Salah was predominantly holding that right touchline, but Liverpool's main attacking route to goal remained. We eventually did see Simeone turn to his bench. He ended up bringing on Marcos Llorente for Diego Costa, which pushed Angel Carrera forward. However, Marcos Llorente's arrival didn't necessarily improve Atletico Madrid's overall tactical shape. Liverpool were still able to get into good positions. We saw Firmino dropping off into midfield more often, and he was involved in a few chances that did involve the fullbacks getting into good positions. Robertson was able to push forward more often in that second half because we did see Mane adopting those central positions on a consistent basis. But then we saw Klopp turn to his bench once again, bringing on James Milner for Oxlade-Chamberlain. Klopp's decision to bring on Milner didn't impact Liverpool's decision to continuously attack down that right-hand side. Milner shifted out to the left side of the midfield, Wijnaldum shifted out to the right, but Wijnaldum took up the role of Oxlade-Chamberlain to make runs from midfield beyond Lodi. Initially, what we end up seeing here is that Saul gives away the ball into Alexander-Arnold, and we end up seeing Henderson shift the ball out to Salah, who receives it ahead of Lodi, cuts across Lodi and Koke, and he splits those two Atletico players to find Wijnaldum breaking into that right channel. Felipe does a good job of reading it and coming across, so Wijnaldum can only fire an effort on goal that All Black does push away. And later on in that game, we ended up seeing Van Dijk shift a diagonal ball out to Salah, and this time we see Salah cutting across Lodi, Koke, and Saul, but he bent a tame effort inches over the net. And even when you look to extra time, once again, Liverpool continued to attack down the same route, but simply couldn't beat All Black. Following Versalco coming on for Trippier, what we end up seeing here is Alexander-Arnold ahead of Koke and Lodi stepping, and he plays a reverse pass between them into the path of Wijnaldum, running off Saul into that right half space, but Wijnaldum's shot from a bad angle is saved by All Black. And the only difference that we saw from Liverpool's second goal is that it came at a time when Liverpool did look to press from the front. We ended up seeing Joao Felix step into the path of Gomez, and we had Koke shifting out to Alexander-Arnold. But what Gomez does well here is that he locates the run of Wijnaldum running off Saul once again, and Gomez plays that ball beyond Koke and Joao Felix into the path of Wijnaldum in that right touchline. Wijnaldum ends up poking the ball beyond Lodi, and that pulls out Felipe to come across. And what Wijnaldum does well here is he locates Firmino darting in between Versalco and Savage, and when that pullback cross does come into the 6-yard box, Firmino nods it into the ground and beyond All Black. But once again, you have Wijnaldum making that run that Oxlade-Chamberlain was constantly making off of Saul, and it finally paid dividends for Liverpool. Nevertheless, Atletico were able to fight back into the game, but it didn't stem from tactical measures. It was simply a combination of Simeone's substitutes being efficient around the box, combined with the fact that Liverpool made mistakes. Adrian's pass into the path of Joao Felix led to Llorente scoring the first goal, and then Morata came on for Joao Felix, and then we saw Marcus Llorente help out Versalco to deal with Firmino in left half space, which led to Morata making an individual run down the right channel, splitting Van Dijk and Henderson to find Marcus Llorente, and he was able to gain a yard on Gomez with Henderson coming across, and he fired his effort past Adrian. Simeone turned to Jimenez for Carrera at the start of the second half of extra time, and we ended up seeing Atletico shift to a 5-4-1. Now they were extremely narrow with 4 central midfielders ahead of the back 5, and they weren't worried about Liverpool delivering crosses into the box because they had 3 center backs with an aerial advantage over Liverpool's attackers. Klopp did turn to a 4-2-3-1. He ended up bringing on Origi for Wijnaldum, which saw Salah ahead of Firmino and Mane and Origi coming off the flanks. But eventually we did see him make like-for-like changes. Fabinho coming on for Henderson, Minamino for Firmino, but it didn't result to any quality chances. And towards the end of that game, once again, it was Marcus Llorente and Morata combining to bypass Fabinho and then split Robertson and Gomez for Morata to break free, and he killed off the game. But when you break down that game as a whole, Klopp won the tactical battle here. He had Oxlade-Chamberlain and then Wijnaldum constantly making runs off Saul to get into good positions, and we ended up seeing Alexander-Arnold and Salah play a key role as Liverpool dominated that right-hand side. The problem here was that although they eventually did score goals, they wasted several chances, and All Black had a great game as he is one of the best goalkeepers in the world. What also can be said is that one Liverpool mistake from Adrian did allow Atletico back into the game, and although Atletico weren't very good here, what can be said is that they were good in that first leg and should have killed off the tie then. And Simeone got his substitutions right here. Marcus Llorente and Morata didn't impact the game tactically, but they were involved for all 3 goals, and that does deserve credit here. And Atletico Madrid, over their 2 legs, comfortably defeated Liverpool despite not playing very well. Hi everybody, thanks for watching, and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the InnerViews show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the InnerViews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.